Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we're discussing the truth of Guilliman's reunion with the Emperor. General spoiler warning to begin, as today we will be discussing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Ever since Roboute Guilliman returned to the Imperium, he's become by far the dominating aspect of the main narrative. It's really no understatement to say the Imperium could live or die by his decisions. And one of the most integral aspects of his current story is the relationship he has with his father, the Emperor of Mankind. At one time, this was believed to be very much a fond one. During Corax's Primarch series novel The Lord of Shadows, we see Guilliman reflect to his brother that he spent much time with his father at the beginning, and he does so sadly, heavily implying it's something he misses. The Emperor chose the 13th to be the example of a Primarch and Legion during his chastisement of Lorgar. Even during Guilliman's founding of Secundus, the sole intent was to protect his father's dream. And upon reawakening within this strange new 40k era, Guilliman's first intent was to reach the throne world, to see if his father still lived. However, since Guilliman emerged from the throne room, he appears to be a far more conflicted soul. Now, we received a glimpse of Guilliman's recollection of this reunion during the event of the Dark Imperium novel Godblight by Guy Haley, and it's something we've spoken about before in depth. We saw a Guilliman faced with the unchained power the Emperor has become, the seemingly fractured soul and spirit he now is, as a countless different words and meanings psychically hammered into an overwhelmed Guilliman's mind. Everything from sun, thing, tool, number, all manner of terms, before ultimately the Emperor managed to draw his many aspects together, to speak to his son in union, albeit briefly, declaring Guilliman his final hope. And as we've discussed before, this was not the welcome that Guilliman was hoping for, and in his emotional state it clearly has had an impact on him. For me, as I've said before, this was a Guilliman emotionally seeking a figurative hug and arm around the shoulder, a man who was so shocked and appalled by what the Imperium had become, the only thing he had ever known. He was just crying out for some form of reassurance, some guidance. And there was only one being within the galaxy who could provide that. It was a very instinctual human desire, a son turning to his father. Guilliman, as we know, doesn't necessarily feel he received that, and it's become very clear that he almost looks to his father with some form of bitterness now, feeling that the humanity the Emperor once displayed was only a mask, and something that he can no longer pretend. And well, we're all going to have our own opinion on that one way or the other. For me, the fact that the Emperor even managed to draw himself back together to speak to Guilliman showcases enough his desire to speak with his returned son. Regardless, however, Guilliman afterwards reflects that every time he remembers the moment within the throne room, he remembers it differently, which throws a great deal of shade onto the events we have at least seen. And it's become clear since Guilliman launched his Indomitus crusade that the Emperor is very much assisting in his efforts. Where Guilliman's fleets travel, the warp is stilled before them, allowing them easier passage across the galaxy and thus greater success against the ruinous powers. And that's not even mentioning the apparent appearance of the Emperor physically at work himself. The people of the Imperium who rise in golden power, where even his custodies are left in little doubt. They are standing before their lord, saving Guilliman from death, purging him of the plagues of Nurgle, before sparing Mortarion and burning the God's Garden. So is this just the Emperor aiding his son where he can? Or perhaps was there more spoken of within the throne room than Guilliman remembers? Well, there actually is a very real possibility that the Emperor did indeed speak with his son more than Guilliman remembers, or at least that we have seen. For Guilliman did not enter into the throne room alone, for by his side was Trajann Valoris, Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, and his story is one quite different from Guilliman's. Now we get Trajann Valoris' version of events, again within the pages of Godblight, just after we have witnessed Guilliman's emotional reunion. However, as far as Valoris was concerned, Guilliman didn't drop to his knees crying out to his father at all, and instead was simply standing there, looking perfectly calm, but intent, with no strain upon his face, having what appeared to be a deep conversation. Valoris couldn't hear what was being said, but he saw nothing other than the Emperor's light, none of the theatrics that Guilliman remembers. And rather intriguingly, after Guilliman leaves the throne room, Valoris looks back to the golden throne for several moments before exiting himself. So, is it just possible that the Emperor did indeed speak with Guilliman more than we have seen? Judging by Valoris' version of events, that certainly seems possible. Could we really take the opinion of a custodian over the likes of a Primarch? Well, it's not as unlikely as it may sound. For all the Primarchs may be true sons of the Emperor, there are none who spend more time alongside the Master of Mankind than his devoted custodes. To even the Emperor's closest sons, Horus, Russ, Vulcan to name a few, he has always retained a certain element of mystery. They all seem to view a different aspect to him, feel his appearance in a different way, never quite able to pin down a true reflection of him. Yet for the Custodes this is not the case. They live and breathe by his side. It is the very purpose they were created for. They see the golden Master of Mankind alright, but they also see the man. The Custodes have never had to be convinced that he is no god, for they have always served and seen the man. And as such, the Emperor values his faithful bodyguards far more closely than, say, the Astartes. Whereas the Astartes are mass-produced, the Custodians are each a work of his art. While I have no doubt that Guilliman is not lying, I feel his version of events could well be what was transpiring within his mind, the sheer overwhelming psychic connection with his father. As we know, the force of the Emperor's words was like talking with a star. It left Guilliman in no doubt he is most likely more powerful now than he's ever been before. But the truth of what transpired in the throne room, the truth of it, is far more likely to be what Valoris witnessed. A deep conversation and discussion with the Emperor. So, what could have been discussed within this conversation Was it a simple "hey son, how you doing" catch up? Or was it more likely the Emperor delivering instructions to Guilliman on just what he needed to do? I think quite obviously the latter. And for me, there's a very important reason I've begun to feel this way. And it ties back to what we saw transpire within the Horus Heresy novel Fury of Magnus by Graham McNeill. And obviously spoiler warning here as we continue, so really if you haven't read that novel, do yourself a favour and read it first. Trust me, you will want to. But assuming you've done that, during this novel we saw Magnus surprisingly kill Malcador, which I don't know about anyone else, but that gave me an absolute heart attack the first time I read it. And the Emperor appeals to the perpetual Olivia to help bring Malcador back. And he does so by showing her visions of the future still possible. And these futures are very much the grimdark 40k universe, the one we all know and love. And of course she's absolutely aghast at all of it, but it's better than the alternative Chaos victory. And most importantly, even within this grim dark there were still glimpses of light, of a possible humanity victory. She sees a time when heroes long thought lost returned, and the war and fight back against chaos truly begins. This is undoubtedly a reference to Guilliman's return. In fact, I believe Guilliman's return is but the beginning. As it states very clearly, heroes long thought lost. Not hero, not Guilliman, not warrior, not general, not son. Heroes, meaning more than one. For me, obviously a tease to the fact she saw a time when the lost Primarchs would return. So, knowing the Emperor was not only aware of this during the heresy, but that this was actually the victory he was fighting towards, that his war against chaos was not over, that he foresaw a time when his lost sons would return and lead the fight back of the Imperium, wouldn't you expect the Emperor to have something in mind specifically for when Guilliman returned? Knowing that he foresaw a future where Guilliman would return, and quite possibly be the first, wouldn't you expect him to have instructions? Again, this is the Emperor we're talking about here, the master of mankind. The man who single-handedly engineered and guided the entire race of mankind to not only fight the gods of chaos, but to defeat them, and even came within a hair's breadth of doing so. Wouldn't he have something very specific he wanted his Primarch to do? For me, in really reflecting and thinking back on Guilliman's reunion within the throne room, the more and more I'm coming to the conclusion that Valoris saw what actually transpired. And yes, while Guilliman may feel and have experienced that confrontation with his ascended father within his mind, the truth is the Emperor delivered far more than a plea of hope that Guilliman remembers. He told Guilliman exactly what needed to be done, at least subconsciously. The future war and fight back against chaos, the one the Emperor foresaw, is undoubtedly begun with Guilliman's Indomitus crusade. While Guilliman may feel this is all his ingenuity, could the truth be this is all very much guided by the Emperor? That he has put Guilliman on the path to this road to victory, and that is why he is acting now across the galaxy for the first time since he was interred upon the throne. Because this is actually all his plan. He knows the war has truly begun now. He knows more of his sons will return. But he knows in order for them to return, Events need to be guided in certain directions. The Emperor is the only being in existence who truly foresaw this future, and he is the only one working towards his ultimate victory, who saw that victory was still, however remotely, possible. Within the throne room, Guilliman may feel he saw an Emperor stripped of his humanity, who wasn't able to warmly console and greet his long-lost son. But perhaps the simple truth is, the Emperor in actual fact guided Guilliman down the exact path he needed him to take. And that rather than Guilliman, it was Trajann Valoris who saw the truth of the Emperor and Guilliman's reunion. But as always everyone, what do you think? Did the Emperor and Valoris have some form of communication in that final look? Why did Valoris see a very different scene than the one that Guilliman felt? And if you had to choose between Guilliman and Valoris, who do you feel saw the truth? Like me, do you feel Valoris saw the truth of what was actually transpiring, and Guilliman's scene took place psychically within his mind? Or do you have another theory of what transpired within the throne room? Is the Indomitus Crusade all proceeding according to the Emperor's plan? Or maybe does the Emperor have nothing to do with it? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.